Well, we all know the song, The Story of Love. You've got to give a little, take a little, let your poor heart break a little. That's the story of love. And when that time comes and, there's no love lost or no love remaining, sometimes people do separate and that becomes permanent. Well, if you were a federal or postal employee when that happened and you had a marriage during that time that you were working, there might be a court order. There might be something called a quadro. And there might be something called an apportionment that you have to pay. And there might be something called money from your TSP that you got to give to your former spouse. Who knows what that is? And it can come in a variety of ways. Now, I was recently asked about this, like, hey, how do I make sure? And this could be on either side. Like you may be the recipient of the apportionment, or you may be the payer of the apportionment. Either way, you want to know what's going on. How much money am I paying? How much money am I getting? When am I paying it? When am I getting it? And how can we confirm this? Well, first of all, when that separation happens, you're going to get a court order and you're also going to see the quadro. Both parties, it's very full disclosure, but the quadro is a qualified domestic relationship order. What's crazy is this is a document ordering OPM to pay in a certain way. And there's a pretty standard mathematical equation they use to determine how you get paid. It's based on how many years you were married divided by, they do months actually, how many years you were married divided by the years you actually worked. And then there's some other calculations in there to determine exactly how much you are paid as a percentage of your pension. And that is, again, an apportionment. So let's do some definitions. That is an apportionment because I'm paying you a portion of my pension when I retire because you earned the portion because we were married for that time period. There's another scenario that can also be ordered in conjunction with that, which is a survivor benefit. Now, that is, you've heard of the survivor benefit because you've got to choose one if you're married, whether it's half of your pension, 25%, or zero, but it costs you money. It reduces your pension by 10% if you leave your current spouse half, or it reduces your pension by 5% if you leave your current spouse a quarter, but you pay nothing if you leave them zero. Now, the judge in your court order, in your proceeding, might order you to leave a survivor benefit to your now former spouse, and that will still charge you, right? So you may have an apportionment and be required to spend 10% out of your pension to leave that former spouse half of your monthly pension if you pass away as well. And I've seen some that continue whether they're living or not. It just depends on how this court order is written. So that is a possibility. There's also a scenario where, unrelated to these, you may be ordered to pay a portion of your TSP. You may be ordered to pull some out, share the taxes, and give that portion to the other party. So there's quite a few things that can happen in a separation. Obviously, none of them necessarily fun, right? But it's things that you want to be aware of because sometimes if you're going to the negotiation table, you may think short-term versus long-term. Sometimes you may prefer to offer a higher percentage of TSP now rather than paying such a heavy portion of pension. I'm just giving you ideas. I don't even know. These are just things that you want to consider. But if that's the case, if you have that document, put it in a very safe place so you never lose it. You don't want to keep looking at it. Obviously, you want to set this, you want to put this time behind you, but you want to be able to pull it out when you need it. I've worked with people who are having to go to the clerk of the court, try to get copies of their stuff, and they can't find the quadro, or they can't find whatever, so they just don't know. And OPM usually gets a copy of it after the separation, so they have it on file for the person. That happens pretty often. And then if you can't find it, they say, no worries, we have it. But I've even seen people make amendments to quadros long after the fact. But in order for an amendment to happen, you got to have people agree. So very not common, could happen, doesn't happen very regularly. Now, these are some things you just want to be aware of. Is there life after a divorce? Absolutely. Absolutely. And you don't have to work forever. I do have some people that swear to me that that's what they're going to do because they just don't want to pay the ex, right? That's every person to themselves, right? Everyone's got their own path to walk. But these are the things you just want to be aware of, right? That you want to be aware of. There are some separations, some divorces that end in nothing, neutral, especially with Twinkies, where I have two postal or federal employees and they're divorcing and they say, you keep yours, I keep mine, nothing. What's crazy is that in my experience, that's been the most common outcome when somebody says, oh, I'm divorced. I'm like, do you owe any money if you're divorced? And when you retire? And they're like, absolutely not. They kept theirs, I kept mine. Nobody has anything else to pay ever again in the future of anything. But on the other end of that spectrum, I've also seen people where I've seen somebody pay alimony forever and has to pay an apportionment and has to pay for the cost of the survivor benefit. That will suck you dry. I mean, to me, that was just unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. I felt like I was the one getting punched in the face. I just couldn't. Anyway, I felt for this person. So there's either ends of the spectrum. So if this is something you're dealing with or think you might be dealing with, just, prepare yourself that these are some potential outcomes and there may be ways, you talk to your attorney and you can protect yourself. If you need help with any of this, let me know. My team and I are well equipped to work with you to help plan for the outcome of the income. So there's what your pension will be after not just tax tag and title like we usually talk about, but also minus the expected apportionment. And my math has been not too far off. I've done some kind of rudimentary math before for people and like, hey, you were only $60 too high or $20 too low or whatever. So pretty good example of the expectation of what that was going to end up being. So not encouraging it, just want to let you know, these are things you want to be aware of, to prepare for. And again, that's what planning is all about. You plan before so that you can be prepared when something happens. But reach out and get scheduled with us and we'll go over everything and I look forward to talking with you soon.